Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
For most teens, it's a living nightmare. And for most parents, it's a saving grace. Australia following up on its promise to ban social media platforms for youth under 16. That legislation kicking in today, with teens on that side of the world already getting used to day one of life without the reels and the video sharing and the messaging and the liking stories. Or are they? I mean, age verification for platforms isn't necessarily robust, with room for error and loopholes already being exploited by teens and even some parents who don't agree with the ban or don't see the point considering how easy it is to circumvent it. Prime Minister Albanese acknowledging that it's not going to be 100% perfect, but it's about the intention to protect and create dialogue and keep youth away from the dangers of the online world when they're too young to know better. I'm Maria Kestane, and today on The Big Story, I'm talking to Jay Olson, postdoctoral fellow at the University of Toronto, to discuss if Australia's recent move to keep youth safe will actually work, and if Canada should consider a similar ban for our own. Jay, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So, we're recording this conversation the day before the 10th here in Toronto. But in Australia, youth are just about to start waking up. Many of them going to reach for their phones, check Instagram or Snapchat or whatever Instagram or whatever social media platform they check first thing, and they will realize they can't. What do you think this first day or these first few days will be like for Australian youth who are going through this sort of withdrawal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so short term, there might be some frustration that they experience. Like usually when you make any kind of large change here, especially something that affects many hours of your kind of waking life, there will be a kind of transition period, right? It might be more negative, might be more positive, depending on the person. And I think short term, it matters a little bit less. I think the interesting part that I think the government there is banking on is that longer term, this will lead to more positive effects than negative effects.
Right. So in terms of, kids there and youth there, do you think they'll be having a bit of a tough time today or there today, I guess, grappling with the fact that they can't log on?
Yes. That was something that we saw as well in Canada when there were the smartphone bans across a bunch of the different regions, and that first kind of transition was challenging for people, right? Getting used to changing a habit, and especially these kinds of habits that are often like ingrained in people's lives, and so I think that we'll certainly see some challenges right off the top.
Breaking down the ban itself, Australia has essentially enforced social media apps to no longer allow kids under 16 to sign up. And those under 16 who already have accounts, they have to prove their age so that the account can remain. The platforms can use facial ID, bank statements, voice recognition to verify age, which to me, I mean, it just sounds very subjective for an age verification process. Besides the aspect of VPNs, which we will get into, what do you make of this age verification process? Do you think Australia has thought it through well enough?
I don't know the specifics about what they're doing there. Like generally, assessing somebody's age is kind of challenging, right? There's a lot of edge cases, people that look younger than they are versus people that look older than they are. If somebody has a sibling that looks just like them, can they just have their sibling's face scanned and that kind of thing? And so I think a lot of the success of these broad policies will come down to how successful these specific verifications may be. In that, let's say that it's 100% successful, and let's say that you're in high school and all of your friends are now off social media. That may be a very different feel from having still 10% of your friends who have snuck past these barriers and are still using social media, and then for the rest of the 90% feeling like they're missing out on kind of key conversations that may be happening there. So lots of it comes down to like how it ends up working in practice.
Right, totally. I mean, for my own concern, I mean, just Is there a privacy concern that we should be looking into here in terms of like facial recognition or voice recognition of children? I mean, kids scanning their face to be verified by age and they're like 11, 12, 13 years old. I mean, is there any privacy concern we should be worried about here?
I think necessarily, like any kind of kind of personal data that you're providing, there's always that potential privacy concern. I think if we weigh it against the kind of data that people are kind of happily sharing on social media, often sharing their location, right, a bunch of their thoughts, their photos, their videos, I think relative to that, it's pretty minor. And so it is true that there is some kind of threat that data will be leaked or something like that, but it's the kind of data that people are often happy to leak themselves as they're using these platforms.
On the topic of VPNs, it's really not that hard for youth to enable one or find another device that they can use with the help of an adult or, as you said, an older sibling. Or they can just go on a different platform, that hasn't been banned. Do you think Australia has considered any of these loopholes?
They have probably talked about about these kind of loopholes, and the challenge with these kinds of social media bans generally is that there's no like perfect way of solving this, right? There's no age verification system that works for all people, and there's no false negatives and false positives from there. And so I think they're kind of pushing in the direction that they think will be positive, knowing that there will be these kind of natural loopholes, and there might be some like technology changes that will be required throughout that process. And so I'd say it's imperfect, but I think that it's a step in the direction that they're intending.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the Prime Minister of Australia even said it himself a few days ago that it's when he was asked how they're going to measure the success of this ban, he said it's already relatively successful because it's creating conversations between parents and teachers and guardians. Do you think dialogue in this context can be a measure of success?
I think that it could be kind of a secondary measure of success. I think that the kind of real concrete successes that we're hoping to see with these kinds of bans are the kind of slowing down or reversal of these trends that we're seeing among youth mental health in terms of depression, anxiety, loneliness, and these kinds of measures. So I think short term, it certainly is creating more discussion, and other countries are certainly watching this, trying to see if it would make sense for like their citizens in the same way. And longer term, I think that's where the real fruit will be.
Yeah, totally. I mean, what do we know right now, Jay, in terms of youth behavior online in Canada? What are we seeing?
Yeah. There was a study that we ran on problematic smartphone use. And so that's basically when like excessive or compulsive phone use ends up interfering with your life. And most of the kind of problematic use that you see on phones is through social media. So these two kinds of issues often go hand in hand. And Australia and Canada both have very similar profiles in terms of problematic smartphone use. So we did a study of about 50,000 people across the world, and there were about 40 countries that we were looking at more specifically. And Canada was very moderate in terms of their problematic smartphone use rates. And Australia's scores were very similar to Canada's there. And so we're not right near the top, right? We see some countries around Southeast Asia there. We're not right near the bottom where we see some of the countries around Western Europe. We're kind of very moderate. And so I think it's interesting from our Canadian context in that with these similar profiles, what works in Australia may possibly work here.
Yeah. I mean, what are the biggest concerns for Canadian youth right now in 2025 in terms of what they're seeing online, how they're engaging with others, what they're posting? What's some of the biggest concerns?
Yeah. I think that the mental health aspect is kind of the largest one. So for the past 15 years or so across many countries, there's been increases in these things we were talking about, depression, anxiety, loneliness. And at the same time, right, all the hours that are being spent on social media or just on screens generally might be interfering with other things that we know can promote well-being in terms of like in-person socializing or sleep or exercising or like reading and that kind of thing. And so I think that part of it is the mental health aspect, part of it is the time aspect, and part of it is specific to social media. So we know that posts and content that are more like politically polarizing or are like more extreme content, that's often the stuff that goes viral. And so it's more likely that people will be seeing this content and interact with that content. And so it's kind of a range of these different classes of problems that social media brings with it.
Starting a business can be overwhelming. You're juggling multiple roles: designer, marketer, logistics manager, all while bringing your vision to life. But for millions of businesses, Shopify is the ultimate partner. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, and 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S. From household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started. Build a stunning online store with Shopify's ready-to-use templates. Boost content with AI-powered product descriptions, page headlines, and enhanced photography. Marketing is easy with built-in tools for email and social media campaigns. Plus, Shopify simplifies everything from inventory to shipping and returns. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/try. Go to shopify.com/try. Shopify.com/try.
You kind of brought up, political polarization and, posts that are a bit more heightened than others. In terms of youth behavior online, are we seeing any alarming or new trends or stats that we should be paying attention to? I mean, I just think of the rise of AI and, deep fake pornography and how dangerous and realistic AI images and content is. Is there anything alarming we should be paying attention to?
I think that one of the most recent changes is that historically it was quite hard to make a fake video of something, right? You would need like a movie set or CGI and that kind of thing. And now it's very easy to make highly realistic looking content. And so I think that one of the challenges that we're starting to see that will like continue to spread is that it's really hard to tell what's true and what's not. And video is no longer like the source of truth that it previously was. And so in terms of like sharing misinformation or kind of creating this kind of fake content that can then kind of change people's views and change people's votes, I think that that's something that we're going to see more and more of.
Right. I mean, the whole reason behind the social media ban in Australia is to protect youth and to kind of help them, navigate online life at such a young age. I mean, is it all so bad? Is there a world where social media and youth can coexist and it's safe and it's helpful?
Yeah. And so we're talking about these kind of negative aspects, right? But of course, social media and smartphones, they bring with them a lot of positive aspects, right? So the obvious ones are just the kind of access to information and the convenience there. In terms of the social benefits, it's a lot easier to connect with friends and families. Or if you're have like niche interests, it's easier to kind of find an online community to kind of share those interests with. And so I think the challenge with smartphones and social media is that there's all these obvious positive aspects that they have, and then there's these negative aspects that come at the same time. And so I think the kind of ideal would be that we have some kind of top-down regulation trying to protect those that are most vulnerable to these negative aspects of smartphones and social media. And then also like these bottom-up strategies that we use ourselves. So like trying to keep your phone outside of the bedroom, for example, so that it's not pinging throughout the night or that you don't get this bright light exposure right beforehand. This kind of combination is what I have the most hope for in terms of like moving forward and getting the benefits of the technology without all the downsides of it.
You mentioned the bottom-up measure. What would a top-down measure look like?
So top-down would be more like regulation, either like the government regulating social media companies or kind of regulating smartphone aspect or smartphone access in some way. And so I think that because of how addictive people often find smartphones and social media, we kind of need the combination of those, in that just talking to participants from our studies who are trying to reduce their phone use, they generally report that they're not successful in doing so. And people have like all kinds of different apps that they've tried, or different kinds of strategies that they've tried. There's somebody that I met last weekend that has this app where the longer you don't use your phone, this bean knits a scarf, and you want it to knit more scarves and that kind of thing, right? And so people are trying all these strategies, but generally what we find in studies is that the majority of these people won't be successful at reducing their screen time to the level that they want. And so I think that's why having the combination of kind of the top-down regulation and these bottom-up strategies can be helpful.
Do you think, in your opinion, the Canadian government, Prime Minister Mark Carney coming in, do you think he's doing enough? Or do you think, if you could advise him on what to do or how to start, or, how to hit the ground running with this, what would you tell him?
Yeah. The challenge that we have right now is that there's a lot of unknowns that we have. Like, we don't know what the best policy mechanism might be for this. We don't know if we're restricting, say, social media to a certain age. We don't know what the most effective age may be there. Generally, I think that the argument that makes most sense to me is that right now, we're like across the world, we're generally not doing very much, right? It was kind of like a natural experiment of having smartphones proliferate and social media following there. And we're starting to see what some of the potential effects of that may have been in terms of these issues with mental health. And so I think what Australia is doing that I like is that they're taking some leadership here, and they're saying, we don't like where things are going, so let's just try this. And we don't have all the evidence and all the studies and all the data to back it up just yet. But it also may not be like many years until we can really conclusively say, like, this kind of social media use causes this kinds of challenges. And so not taking action is also an action itself. And so I'm liking that some countries are trying something, and then longer term we'll be able to see which of these strategies is the most effective.
I mean, we're also seeing a number of Australian teens and even parents even, as well as digital activist groups, come out and actually reject this ban, saying it infringes on the right to freedom and expression, and that it's a form of censorship, and that it's prohibiting kids from connecting and building community. Do you think those arguments hold any weight here?
Yes. I think that with these kind of blanket bans, there's always going to be some people who benefit from them and some people that are harmed from them, right? And that's kind of like a necessary aspect of any kind of like large scale regulation that you have. And so the balance that's being kind of tested right here in this Australian context is like, okay, if doing nothing might lead to some of these negative effects, assuming that there's these like negative causal effects on mental health, then doing something might be more positive. And that may mean that although the average adolescent may benefit from this, certain people, like with more niche communities, niche interests, maybe certain rural families, they may have more negative effects from this. And so in some sense, it is a very kind of personal trade that's being made for them. And for the people that it ends up freeing up a bunch of time, some of them are going to spend it on kind of well-being promoting things, exercising, in-person socializing. Some of them are going to spend it scrolling other AI slop videos, right? And so some people will get the benefits of the free time and be able to leverage that, and some of them won't. And so it's really hard to find a solution that kind of is effective for everybody in the same way. And so I think that those arguments certainly apply, and there's kind of no way around them in some sense.
Do you think generally like age-based restrictions on social media work, considering how easy it is to circumvent them? Do you think they actually can protect youth?
I think they potentially can. We don't have enough research on kind of these broad scale population studies to say like what kinds of things might be effective versus not. And so it's kind of like we're it's like feeling around trying to find a solution that might work right now. And I think like, I don't know, 5-10 years from now, this may be very clear. But right now it feels like a trade-off of doing nothing, potentially having these continued negative effects, and trying something which may potentially help long term.
It's interesting that you think like the collateral damage of this online ban is worth, the results of potentially saving a bunch of kids.
Potentially, yeah. And so that's my current view right now. But it's a view that's kind of tentatively held, in that, to my knowledge, Australia is like on the forefront of these age-based social media bans, and so they're trying something, and like we'll see whether or not that works longer term.
What's interesting to me is that the punishment for defying the order in Australia is a fine of up to $33 million Canadian, which does seem like a lot. But to these companies that bring in billions of dollars every year, I mean, that's kind of a slap on the wrist in some sense. What do you make of the punishment?
Those financial aspects, I don't know specifically. Like I think they're high enough that the companies will feel something like that, and there's probably like some reason why they don't go with a super high amount from there. But yeah, those specific policy aspects, like those, I kind of know less about, so I don't know much to comment on that.
No, yeah, and it's also interesting because if the punishment was too high up, Australia also runs the risk of, Meta or Snapchat or TikTok pulling, services from their country. And I'm sure they don't want to do that. But I mean, also just to me, 33 million for a company like Meta last year, they brought in, I think over $160 billion in revenue. I mean, that's just, I think it's trivial to me, but yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Jay, in your opinion, what do you think is the most effective tool to protect kids online?
Most effective tool to protect kids online. I'd say in many cases, I'd say that it would be the parents, and that it's often the parents who have at least the beginning of the control of like when the child would be getting a smartphone, or kind of the specifics of their internet use at home. And so I think that it's a challenging problem to solve generally, but I don't think that we can rely on just children themselves or some teenagers to like have all of the kind of self-control that would be needed to have this new piece of technology that people tend to find very addictive, has a lot of like positive benefits and also some negative ones. Sometimes the negative ones that kind of come about longer term. I think it's challenging to put all the responsibility on the users themselves, and so I think it's I think the immediate answer would be that would fall more with the parents, plus or minus, right? Knowing that there's a lot of cases where parents can't supervise their children the entire time, or that their children, they go and they hang out at friends' houses and they're on somebody else's smartphone there. But in terms of like what kind of a level I think is the most feasible to tackle this, I think the family level would be that.
All right, it's going to be an interesting few weeks to watch this all unfold. Jay Olson, postdoctoral fellow at the University of Toronto, thank you so much for joining me today.
All right, thank you.
And that was The Big Story. If you have any comments on this conversation, we'd love to hear them. Find us on Blue Sky at The Big Story, or reach us by email at hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca. Be sure to share this episode with a friend or with someone you think may enjoy it. The Big Story publishes every weekday morning, and don't miss our weekend listens. I'm Maria Kestane. Thanks for listening.